start. Back here at the familiar Lucky Chances beautiful parking lot. Putting in back-to-back sessions here at Lucky Chances. Played here yesterday, about to put in another session today. Just gonna dive into the notable hands played from last night. In this first hand, I'm in under the gun +1 with pocket queens, raise it to $20, and I get 3 callers. 4 ways to a flop of ace, ace, deuce with 2 spades, big blind checks. I decided to check it, just playing a little bit conservative here to start the session, particularly given that it's a 4-way pot. It's decently likely that one of the players can hold an ace. After I check it, the other 2 remaining players check it back. Comes a 4 of hearts, and it checks through again. The river brings another deuce. This time when big blind checks, I decide to go for some thin value, $40. Gets over to the late position player, and he doesn't want to play for minimum value. He raises it to $200, big blind folds, and just gotta make the quick fold here. Even though he checked on flop and turn in position, when he raises that large on the river, it's just kind of hard to call, so I let it go. In this next hand, it's a 6-way limped pot. I'm in the small blind with 5-7 of hearts. Get a pretty nice looking flop when it comes 10-6-5 with 2 hearts. So flop the open-ended straight draw here plus the flush draw. Checks over to early position. He bets $35, cutoff and button call. With my exact hand holding, having quite a bit of equity here, I decide to bump it up, play it pretty aggressively. I raise it to $180. Can certainly debate sizing there a little bit, but just felt kind of like the right amount at the time given the number of players that were involved. And it gets over to the button. Everybody folds back to the button. And after he tanks for a while, he makes the call. The turn comes a queen of spades. Good spot to keep firing, I think. If he's capped at a hand with like a pair of 6s or a pair of 10s, the queen can definitely look like a scare card. With 650 back here, I think a good sizing to go with is about $200 to $250 with the willingness to get $400 in on the river. And despite that being, I think, the most optimal play, I chicken out, I shy out, and I check it. And he checks it back. And yeah, don't really have a good reason other than being gun shy here, to be perfectly honest. And the river brings a 4, it pairs the 4. And this time I'm not sure if I can credibly bet to make it look like I've got a 10 or better. So I just give up and I check it. He checks it back. I roll my hand over and he rolls over 7-9 offsuit for the missed gut shot and takes it down with 9 high. So pretty unsatisfied, obviously, with the results, but more so, I think, not having the follow through and just kind of going with how I think I should have played my hand. Just shied away that time, and I paid a pretty sad price for it and lose to the 9 high here. So following that hand, confidence wasn't particularly the highest, but in this next hand, I'm in early position with king queen offsuit in 7-handed lineup. I raise it to $20. I get 3 callers and we go multi-way to a flop of queen jack 7 with 2 diamonds. I c-bet it for $50, middle position calls, and a late position player raises it to $130. When he gets back to me, I decide to make the call and the other players fold. The turn pairs a 7, so that's a pretty good card because one of the hands that I was certainly a bit wary of was pocket 7s, but having a 7 come on the turn makes it just a little bit less likely that he has that hand. So I check it once more over to him and he puts out a bet of $200. If I call, it only leaves $300 back. But he's definitely repping a hand, like maybe even as strong as queen jack, but with a hand as strong as king queen with a diamond blocker here, not ready to let it go. So I make the call and the river comes a pretty bad card, a pretty tough card, and it comes another jack. So he was betting with a jack high flush draw. He gets there. But yeah, I check it over to him and he deliberates for a little bit, checks it back. So that's a good sign. We table our hands and he shows queen 10 offsuit. So that's one of the value queens that I can beat here. Pretty surprised that he raised me with that particular hand holding. This next hand, UTG limps. I'm in UTG 1 with ace deuce of diamonds. I raise it to $25. Middle position puts in a pretty large 3-bet, $130, and he's only got 170 back. I'm planning to just fold my hand here, but the big blind cold calls and the under the gun player jams all in for $75. Given that I'm closing the action and I have a hand with some nut potential with the ace high diamonds here, I think it's okay to call, particularly because big blind is playing pretty deep, over 1K. So we go to a flop of duck, duck, queen. So make trip deuces on this board. Really, really nice flop from my hand. Big blind checks, I check, and as expected, middle position goes all in for his remaining 170. Big blind calls, so a little bit concerning there because he's pretty tight, and I would expect that he'd fold a lot of his other pairs. So at worst, he's probably got a hand like ace queen, but on occasion, I could be up against pocket queen. So a little bit wary of that as well, and I just make the call. The turn comes a king, so another card that's not ideal. given that I block aces. It's more than possible that one of the other players are holding hands like pocket queens, pocket kings, but my exact hand holding is just so strong here that I'm not sure that I can get away. But when big blind checks it, I decide to check it back just for pot control and try to get some information on big blind's hand. The river brings a 3 and big blind quickly checks, so that's a really good sign. I go for some value here and I bet $300. He doesn't think too long, makes the call. I table my hand, big blind mucks. The under the gun player that went all in pre-flop mucks, and middle position tables pocket kings. He turns the full house. He takes the main pot and one of the side pots down, and I take one of the side pots down to break even in this hand. Couldn't fade that king on the turn, but if I did, it would have been nice to scoop a pretty big pot. The last hand to note from last night, there's a low jack and a high jack limp. I'm in the cutoff with 9-10 of hearts. I raise it to $30 and I get a few callers. We go multi-way to a flop of 9-8-6 with 2 clubs and a heart. Checks over to hijack, he bets $100. I make the call and the small blind makes the call. The turn comes a jack of diamonds, so I pick up the open-ended straight draw. Small blind checks and hijack does not stop betting. He bets $200 with about 140 back. From playing with hijack for about an hour at this point, he seems to be a pretty recreational player, willing to get it in there with a variety of hand holdings. So I think my hand still can be the best hand a good amount of the time. Plus I've got some outs coming in on the river. So I make the call and small blind folds. The river comes a deuce. He jams 140, can't fold for that price. I make the call and he tables queen 7 offsuit. So I take it down here with second pair and fade the straight draw here. So those are all the notable hands from last night. Pretty smooth session, stuck a little bit early on in the session, $300 or $400, but from there, picked up some good momentum after that king-queen hand and was in the game for $1,000 and cashed out $1,915, so profit of $915. And yeah, back-to-back sessions as mentioned. Just gonna start another session now and report back with some more hands. All right, just closing out a session here, a little bit past midnight, not super late. Not sure if you can hear it in my voice though, but it looks like the reemergence of a cold and a fever that I had earlier in the week has made its way back, but just gonna power through a few hands, not too many to get through to wrap up this session here. The first hand to run through is gonna be the most notable and interesting. We're playing six-handed, it's a straddle pot, low jack and cutoff limp. Small blind makes it $40 and it gets me in the straddle. I've got ace queen offsuit and I bump it to $120. Gets back to small blind, he makes the call. We're playing about $400 effective from here. Go heads up to a flop of jack 10-10 with 2 hearts. He checks it, I decide to check it back. The turn comes in 8 of hearts, he checks it, I fire out a bet of $80, leaving a little bit over 300 back to keep options open on the river in case I need to get the money in there, whether as for value or as a bluff. Hoping to get him off a hand like pocket 7s, pocket 6s, even 9s, maybe a little bit optimistic, try to get him off a hand like 9s, but after deliberating for a little bit, he makes the call. The river comes a jack of clubs, and this time he fires out a bet of $240. Really interesting bet. He's pretty much only repping a jack, and I don't know, it's really hard to explain some of the live table dynamics, but it just felt bluffy at the time. And as mentioned, I did put him on a hand like maybe pocket 7s, 9s, something along those lines, and this river is not good for those hands because he has no showdown value now, and maybe he's just trying to turn those hands into bluffs. So after deliberating for a little while, despite only having ace high, I stick with being a call station as I've been in the past, and I make the call, and he tables king queen of clubs. So successful call down here, and yeah, take this one down. Nice to pick this hand up. Next hand, there's a couple limps. I'm in the small blind with pocket queens and I raise it to $35. I get a middle position and button call. 3-way still flop with king 6-3 with 2 spades. I check it. Definitely can bet here sometimes, but just to exhibit a little bit of pot control here, I check it and the other players check back. Turn comes a 10 of diamonds, and this time I fire a bet of $40. Middle position calls and button folds. River comes with 4 of diamonds, and I consider thin value betting here to target a 10, but because diamonds come through, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to get value from a 10 here. Plus, he can also have diamonds himself. So after just thinking about it for a little bit, I check it, and he checks it back, table in my hand, and it is good here. So take this one down as well. Next time we're playing four-handed, raises $15 with Jack-6 of diamonds, definitely widening the range here, playing short-handed. The button and big blind call. Three ways to a flop with 7-3 deuce with 2 diamonds. Big blind checks, I bet $20. Button puts in pretty much a min raise to $45. Big blind folds, and it's definitely a pretty clear call, I think, in this spot, but for some unknown reason, maybe because it's short-handed and I was just trying to amp up the aggression, I decided to put in a raise here, and I raised it to $145. And after thinking about it for a little bit, he makes the call, leaving about 300 back. Turn comes an ace of spades, and I should be shoving here, I think a good portion of the time, but given that it's an ace on the turn, I feel like, I don't know, didn't pick up any additional equity and just don't feel super comfortable firing out with a flush draw here. So I check it, and he fires out a bet of $140, and I decided to just let it go here. Could be drawing dead on occasion, could be drawing live, but I don't know, just a very weirdly and poorly played hand, I think, on my part in this hand, and yeah, lose this one. This next hand, we're still playing four-handed. It's a limped pot, and I'm on the button with the mutually beneficial hand that is 6-9 of spades. 4 ways to a flop of queen 4-3 with 2 spades. Small blind bets $15, and only I make the call. Turn's a good one. He comes a 5 of spades, so I make the flush. He doesn't stop betting though, so that's a good sign. He bets $35 to stay in trap mode. I just flat here, and the river comes an ace of clubs. He fires out a bet again, $55, and now it's a matter of how much value I think I can get. I ultimately decide on $175, and after thinking through for a little bit, he makes the call. Table my hand, and it's good here. So yeah, those are all the main notable hands from tonight. There was one more quick hand where had aces against ace queen of spades in an all-in pot against a shorter stack. He flopped a flush draw, but was able to fade on the turn and river for the aces to hold, so that was nice. And yeah, ultimately was in the game for $600, cashed out for $1407, so nice profit of $807. And yeah, just gonna get home and go to sleep. The plan is to wake up in the morning, hopefully feel a little bit better, because I want to play the weekly Sunday tournament, 260 buy-in, something like that. First place guaranteed 8,000. If anything notable comes out of that, I'll make sure to include that on the video. But yeah, didn't really go into super in-depth analysis, particularly on the ace queen hand. So if any of you have questions, thoughts, feel free to just drop them in the comments, and do my best to kind of elaborate further if need be. So it's gonna wrap it up for this one, and yeah, see you all on the next one.